Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2018 World Government Summit. I'm Jolene Creighton with Futurism, and this is the Technology in Innovation session. The first guest that we have today is Deep Kalra. He is the founder and group chairman and CEO of India's leading online travel company, MakeMyTrip. Since its inception in 2000, he steered MakeMyTrip as CEO to a successful listing on the NASDAQ in August of 2010, and took on the role of Group CEO in 2013 to focus on strategy, M&A, and international business. Today, Deep is here to offer his insights on his business success, and he'll discuss how he successfully pioneered through the recent volatile markets while grabbing on to opportunities that others failed to succeed, or to seize. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Totally impressed by the organization. I landed into Dubai probably 45 minutes ago, literally touchdown. Got here like the way the city works, probably a city of the future, whisked from the aircraft, brought here, got everything done. Hats off to the organizing, it's really very impressive. So what I'm going to talk about is MakeMyTrip and the story, but probably a little bit more what I call learnings from my trip as an entrepreneur. And over the next 20 minutes, I have a bunch of slides just to highlight some of the key points. But what I'd really love to do beyond that is to have questions both from Julian and the audience. And I'd love to answer those. So if we can make this as interactive as possible, that'll be great. Perhaps I'll run through my slides first, and then we can come back. But if there's a very pressing question, please go for it. No problem at all. Okay. So I think everyone might have read this famous quote said by Henry Ford. And this was the time the first automobile was invented, 1904. Henry Ford said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have probably said, I need a faster horse carriage, because that's what people knew. And the point out here is that innovation is really all about non-linear thinking and non-linear action. Linear action doesn't take you to innovation. You can do more of the same thing, you can do more of the same thing better, but if you want to break out of the mold and do something totally different, I think you've got to think in a very different way. I'll give you some great examples which have been very inspiring for me. I think we've all heard about the story on how the Walkman, how many people remember the Walkman, Sony Walkman, yeah? So it's a game changer for Sony, right? But no one uses a Walkman any longer. That was also a giveaway on age, by the way. I grew up on the Walkman, and then the iPod came and changed all of that. And then, of course, iTunes and other kinds of music, and Spotify is changing all of that. But even if we look at it in the field of transportation and communication and healthcare, and I think these are the three fields where people have been most obsessed with actually breaking out of the mold, and they should be, at least from the last. So when we talk about communication, I think we've all done the dial-up for the longest time. Many of us, many young people probably never. We're doing the mobile phone now, and then of course, who knows what we'll be doing next. Many of us are already making calls while talking to our phone's still in our pocket, or we're talking to our watch and making a call. And we're even seeing our family on the watch, which could be 14 hours away in New York or somewhere else. All of that's happening with communication. What about transportation? What Henry Ford did was give us our first automobile, but now we're pushing the boundaries of that. And now, already a reality, the electric vehicle, already a reality, the autonomous car. The first time I saw an autonomous car on the road, I was driving between Silicon Valley and San Francisco, and our driver just very casually said, we were on an investor roadshow, and just very casually said, oh, that's Google's autonomous car. He said driverless, that was the word. And I said, what do you mean there's a guy driving? And I come from India where you drive on the right side of the road, and then suddenly I realized that guy was not sitting on the driver's seat. And he was along the freeway on the slowest lane. So I told our driver, please just go alongside him. We drove alongside that car for 15 minutes. There was someone on the non-driver seat. The car was driving, slowing down, taking the bends, doing everything 4 years ago. It's a reality today. And then maybe the Hyperloop next. So we really don't know where the boundaries of this are going. I think with healthcare, most of it is good. Diagnosis today can happen in non-invasive ways. Operations can happen in non-invasive ways, which could never happen before. And hopefully, I think the biggest hope for the future is really that we will indeed find cures for diseases which are still, I think, ailing the world. But coming closer to what I do. So when I started MakeMyTrip in 2000, prior to that, I had done 3 corporate jobs. I did a very regular education career, in India at least, fairly regular. I did an economics honors degree from Delhi University, a college called St. Stephen's, which is fairly well known. And then I did an MBA from a college called the Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad, which is also fairly well known, fairly well regarded in India. And I tumbled into what I guess was the right thing to do, which was take a banking job. So I worked with ABN AMRO Bank for 3 years. Then I brought an American company called AMF Bowling to the country. And then I worked with GE Capital. And my whole motivation to join a company like GE was I wanted to learn. So at the age of about, I think, 28 or so, I got the feeling that I've stopped learning enough because AMF Bowling was very good at what they did, but not necessarily an intellectual giant. But GE Capital was clearly the place I could learn a lot. So in '99, I joined GE Capital. Very excited because they gave me a charter, which I think was a dream charter. Firstly, kudos to a company like GE because they were willing to hire a guy with a very different background. And the charter was to find new avenues to distribute their consumer finance products, which is called GE Money today, was called GE Countrywide then. And among them were consumer loans, auto loans, personal loans, and the like. And what was the new avenue in '99? It was obviously the internet. So it is a fascinating way to get professionally introduced to the internet, which was already happening. And I had a couple of moments where, really kind of pushed me and was kind of convincing me that this is going to change the way we do everything. And in hindsight, it's very easy to say, but the fact is that I went to our super boss at GE Capital, a wonderful gentleman called Pramod Bhasin, and I said, Pramod, I really think we should do the internet in a far more serious manner. And he bought the pitch. There was a long pitch. There were many slides. In GE, you have to make a lot of slides. And he gave us $1 million, and he picked out 13, 14 guys from all the GE companies, and he said, we're going to do GEindia.com. But in a few months, it became clear to me that when you try to do something new, it's got to be all or nothing. So the company, I believe, has to live and die by what you do. It cannot be a side project. It cannot be a weekend thing. So you can't say, okay, we're going to review this every Friday, maybe we missed it this time, or we'll review it next time. Never gets done. One of my biggest learnings is that it's got to be your reason for living or your raison d'etre. If it's your raison d'etre, there's a much higher chance of it happening. And so in 16 months of being with GE, I decided I'm going to take the plunge. And took the plunge into entrepreneurship without having planned an entrepreneurial career, really. But the internet gave the platform for someone with very little resources. I didn't have that much money, but the ability to raise money on a business plan with a little bit of your own money. So I got early stage funding. I had 2 business plans. So I was naive enough at 29 to go to a venture capitalist and say, I believe we can take travel online in India. Expedia was already there in the US, and so was Travelocity. That was, I guess they were around since 96, 97. There was hardly anyone doing this in India. We were the pioneers. Or we can take stockbroking online. And my thesis was very simple. The thesis was, whatever we are doing on the phone currently is more likely to move online. And just hark back to 99 and 2000 days. Those of you who were probably working, and the first few, at least in India, the internet was very new, dial-up modems, lines getting disconnected, 128 kbps. I mean, it was painfully slow, but still things were changing. And I had 2 moments of truth. My 2 moments of truth were, I sold a second-hand car for my wife online. A friend who was in the auto trade had put me onto a second-hand car dealer, which is obviously not a good word anywhere in the world. And he said, he's going to get you the best price. He did definitely get me the best price I could have got in the offline world. But I also put the car online on a site called Automart India. And within hours, I had a couple of queries. The same weekend, I had 2 serious guys come and see it. And by Sunday, the deal was done for 20,000 rupees higher than the best price I got offline. I said, something's going on out here, and it was obviously disintermediation, but I hadn't quite connected the dots yet in my mind. I just said, this is powerful. The second thing was actually a holiday, without planning travel at that point of time, but we were doing a holiday to Phuket. And our travel agent, we used to talk to a local travel agent, was very quick in issuing me tickets. We flew on Thai for me and my wife before we had kids, and he said everything's set. But the hotel booking kept on going back and forth. And to the point where he'd send brochures to me, we'd go to his office, he said, come and sit here. And went on for a week, and I said, why is it taking so long? And I didn't really know what's happening behind the scenes. So I went online and I saw a site called asiarooms.com, I believe, and a couple of others. And the same hotel that he was offering me, Coconut Lagoon, was available $15 per night, US dollars cheaper. And over 6 or 7 nights, it was almost $100, which was a lot for me back then. And I said, okay, with some degree of trepidation, I did drop my credit card online. I was a little worried because my wife was pregnant, we were allowed to travel, and I was a little worried about showing up at this place which may not be like the picture suggested. And that was the real worry. The good news was that it worked out just fine. Saved a lot of money, showed up out there. The hotel was pretty much 90% as good as the photos, never 100%. None of us are 100% as good as our photos, because we can pose for our photos, of course. But both these dots, for me, together were saying the internet's ready for disruption. And the plan that I was most excited about was actually travel, although I did have a finance backing. For me, online stockbroking seemed like something which would belong to a large financial house eventually. Online travel seemed like something which could belong to an individual, which could become a big company focused with or infused with personal aspirations. And most importantly, travel is fun. So headlong, I dived into something, just about 30 years old, where I think one is far more fearless. And I didn't think that hard. I put all my life savings in. My wife tells me I put her life savings in too. She used to work then. And wives never forget these kind of things. So all the money went into MakeMyTrip. And very soon we got funding, early stage funding from a fund called eVentures, which was half SoftBank and half News Corp. In 2000, we got $2 million with a promise of getting another $1 million if we hit certain milestones in a year, very typical. Well, guess what happened between 2000 and 2001? The entire world changed, especially for travel. So the dot-com bust happened. No one wanted online anymore. People were dropping the dot-com suffix. People were actually saying it's a bad thing. eVentures wanted to pull out their money. 9/11 happened, and that changed the world of travel forever. For at least for many, many years, I can tell you travel was depressed. And then in the eastern part of the world, and we're so much closer to India, specifically in Singapore, SARS epidemic hit. And so a lot of people were actually having issues about flying to many parts of the world. So I call it the triple whammy, but I think we were crazy enough. We were crazy enough to continue, for better or for worse. So there are a couple of things which told me that we should carry on. The first thing that told me that we should carry on was the left side of the brain. The left side of the brain listens to numbers. And when I saw the numbers, the most important number, which for me in our business is the conversion metric. How many people come to your site? How many people buy? At a very macro level. Then we break it down to a funnel. And the funnel is at every step of your website or app today, 75% of our business today is through the mobile app. Every step of it, what is the conversion number? How many people stay and how many people drop off? And that becomes critical for you to measure. So as I saw our conversion numbers, they kept getting better week on week. We were doing something right. However, we needed money to fund the gap because we didn't have quite enough money. How would we go through this entire period? So we decided, I had 2 senior colleagues who later went on to become co-founders with me because of their sacrifices in the business. We were 42 people with a website launched, everything ready, eVentures saying either buy us out or shut down the company. We had enough cash, I think, to pay everyone 2 or 3 months' salary and shut down everything, pay off all our liabilities, which would have been, I think, pretty depressing if we had done it way back then. Today I can say that with confidence. But at that point of time, it wasn't so clear. I have to be honest, it was a very tough choice because the logical part of the brain was saying, you have a high opportunity cost, you have a good degree, you can go out and do something, most of your colleagues can go out and do something. How are you going to do this without cash? But I think the left side of the brain, or rather the creative side of the brain, or probably it's what we call the gut was saying we were onto something. So the numbers, the analytics, which I think I always fall back on, along with an entrepreneur's gut instinct that this is going to work, I think, gave me the power to carry on. So I shared with my entire team very candidly on a Friday. We used to work every Saturday and every Sunday. I know everyone works Sunday in Dubai like we do today, but in India, most companies don't work Sunday. Most companies don't work half Saturday either. This Friday evening, I told everyone, guys, this is the situation. It's a grim scenario. We've done a great job coming up to here, but there are going to be cuts for senior people who will stay. We'll reimburse that in terms of equity in this company. I will give my personal equity for people who will take those cuts. And for junior people, there'll be no raises but no cuts. Well, what happened, I guess you can all imagine. People came back on a Monday morning, and we were down to half our size. So from 42 people, we dropped to about 24 people. A lot of senior guys said, listen, we have responsibilities, we have a family. And I said, I'm going to hold nothing against you. Deep down inside, I think I was a little happy that there were some people ready to drop off because we had to lessen our fixed costs. We shrunk from a nice office, big office, to what is called a mezzanine, a very low, 8-foot-high building floor. Very narrow, very long, very small. We sat like sardines, really, in a rail compartment. But for the next 3 years, I think we had what I call trial by fire. From 2001 to 2004, we were truly bootstrapped. And when you're bootstrapped, I can assure you, if you stick it out long enough, you come out with solutions which you can never come up with when you have money in the bank. It's just one of those facts of life, because you find more creative ways of doing everything. You just work harder on conversion. You work harder on every customer that you acquire because it's about survival. So it goes back to the point I made why big companies can't necessarily bet the bank and change overnight. Because it's not easy to do that. You have something else which is a cash cow. But when you have nothing and this is everything for you, you've got to bet everything on it. So the next 3 years were a roller coaster ride. For 18 months, I took home no money, which wasn't fun when you go home to a wife and with the same kind of look every day. But we got out of that period by sheer dint of effort and a team which I think I give the full credit to the team who stuck by. That very same team, a lot of those folks are still with me 17 years down the line. We IPO'd in 2010 on NASDAQ, which was 9 years after those crazy days, or after 2003, about 7 years. Almost everyone stuck by. And 70% of our staff was covered by an ESOP plan when we IPO'd. So a lot of these people really did get the just rewards for trading off their salary for equity. And that for me was the most fulfilling moment from a financial point of view, as it would be for any entrepreneur. Still gives me goosebumps when I think about the fishbowl on NASDAQ and going public that day. But I think the big learning out here is, and I tell all young entrepreneurs the same, if you're staking out to start something of your own, and I have many colleagues of mine who come to me, Deep, we've worked together for 4 years, we've worked together for 8 years, we've worked together for 12 years. I've had a great time, but I really want to do something of my own. It's very hard for me to hold that guy back or that lady back. It's very hard because how can I say don't do it? So I do try, let's try to do this together, blah, blah, blah. But normally when you got to go, right? So when these people are ready to go and they ask for advice, and even if they don't ask for advice, the one piece I tell everybody, and very sincerely I mean it, is don't look back for 4 to 5 years. You won't even see the green shoots of a business, not in India at least. Maybe Silicon Valley, maybe 2 years, 3 years. It's a very fertile ecosystem. Companies like Instagram can go nuts in a year. But in India, it takes a long time to build a business. So therefore, if you look back and you say, I'm going to call it quits, you'll never know what you could have built. I have a firm belief that some of the best companies in the world have not seen light of day because someone gave up too soon. Someone gave up too early. They just said, listen, this is going nowhere. Let's throw in the towel. I know 10 such stories of Indian and US startups where I've spoken to the founders one-on-one, and they've told me we came this close to shutting down. Very similar stories. This is not unique to MakeMyTrip. Flipkart, which is India's Amazon, a wonderful company, came this close to shut down. You'll hear from my friend after this from Zomato. Deepinder will tell you his story. I know for a fact they've come pretty close. They've had some really tough moments, but you've got to just hang in there because it's very hard to start something new. It's really hard because in your own mind, 2 dots and 2 not successful ventures, or I can use the word failure, I don't think it's a bad word, oftentimes takes away the guts to go and do it all over again. So moving forward, when you talk about scaling up a business, what should you keep in mind? I think there are four tenets for me which you want to keep in mind. The first tenet and the most important thing is listen to your customer. If you have a dilemma in terms of should we do this or should we do this, and you'll always have dilemmas. Even Google, with 10,000 people and the smartest engineers in the world, and Facebook and Apple, they have dilemmas. And the dilemma is always prioritization. Because you always have enough money if you're a big company. You have people, but to do something path-breaking, it's always should we do this or should we do this? So when you want to prioritize, the lens you want to see the different decision-making points through is the customer lens. Which is the thing which will solve the customer problem? That typically will lead you and show you the way. We have a mandatory day in office. It's called go-to-market. I do lead by example out there, where everyone, the top 100 managers of the company, have to be out talking to customers, talking to partners, small hotels, large airlines, big chains. But most excitingly for me is to talk to individual customers who are not like us, from a very different socio-eco profile, because they think differently. They don't probably use iPhones. But guess what? 430 million people in India are online today. There's a tier 2 and a tier 3 and a tier 4 in India. The tier 4 in India are small towns where they barely have Wi-Fi anywhere. They barely have connectivity. They manage to do transactions on 2G connections. So we have to build an app for them which will work on 2G. I know Dubai is already talking about 5G and it's 4G almost everywhere. But most of India is 3 and 4G, but there are places which is 2G. So we have a light app which people don't need to delete because it takes very little space so that we can service this customer and the most emerging customer. That, I think, is the most important thing. The second one is always build for scale. Don't build things which need more people to grow. You can put 10 great engineers to build something, even 50, to build something really great. But then after that, the scale should come just by having more traffic. You should, in fact, start enjoying economies of scale, and you should not have to put more and more people behind it. If you put more people behind it, your unit economics will never work out. So always be mindful that you're building something and you're building it actually for scale, which I think is one of the most important things. And then there's this very interesting thing about analysis paralysis, which means we oftentimes get into too much of debate. And I've got a curve out there, if you can see, which actually shows that by getting too much information, and today we all have too much data, but what's the right data and what's the data to leave and what to look at, that's the key. Too much data can actually lead to too much confusion. So you want the optimal amount of data to be able to take a decision on which way to move forward very often. I can't even read that far. Clearly my eyes are going this thing. And fourthly, and I think most importantly, is stay fixated to the issue that you're going to create something great. But don't be so fixated to any one business plan or model. Be nimble, be agile. Sometimes you have to change your business because technologies are changing, preferences are changing, people are changing. If we believe that it'll always be done over the phone or the website, we would have missed the whole mobile thing. We would have missed the app thing, and today 70% of our customers come through mobile, and overall, this is probably going to become 90%. So be nimble enough and be humble enough as an entrepreneur to take the best ideas. They can come from anyone in the company, but if it's a good idea, it shouldn't matter if it was yours or not. Take up the idea and then take it to the next level. People talk a lot about strategy. I think strategy is great, but very often I do believe that execution is even greater. We all get stuck sometimes in too much of strategy. At least we do as a company. We have some great minds, and they can debate anything. So if I come back on a Monday morning, like after this trip, I'm going back tomorrow, and I'm sure I get my best thoughts, by the way, up in the plane. And I hate the thought that there's Wi-Fi now on planes, because it's very tempting to go online. It's lovely to have no phones and lovely to be able to think. And I come back with a great idea, and I present it to my team, and I say, guys, I think this is what we're going to do on our Monday morning meeting, and this time it'll be Tuesday morning. And I say, we're going to do this. I want people, one, who can challenge it, and secondly, who can execute on it if they agree. So once you get people to agree with your plan, go ahead and execute the hell out of it. The beauty of the internet business is you can test everything. It's called A/B testing. So we can A/B test anything, which is basically we can expose a small percentage of our traffic to a certain change on the website and then measure how that control group, maybe 1%, maybe 0.5% of traffic, behaves in terms of conversion versus the balanced 99%. It's a very powerful framework. You have to invest in building that framework. But once you do it, you can do fascinating things because it takes away all the guesswork. Amazon and Booking.com apparently are running hundreds of experiments at one point of time. We normally are running about 20 ourselves. And then we study the data. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 weeks to see a trend. But it's fascinating to see the kind of results that come out of an A/B test. And then you can take a much more informed decision onto this. So I'm a huge believer in hiring better than yourself. And I know you're going to say it's very easy for a founder because founders can't get fired. Of course, they can also. If you've heard about a nice little company called Uber.com, anyone can get fired if you push it. So, but the point is, whether a founder or a leader, if you're confident of your own abilities and you hire people better than yourself who can challenge you and eventually take up your role, that's the only way you're going to move up. So I keep pushing everyone in my leadership team. I said, don't be afraid. Hire the best guys you can get. I also say the smartest guys. But while saying that, I also believe there's got to be a cultural fit. Every company has a unique culture. The smartest individuals need not be the best team players. In fact, ironically, the smartest individuals are not the best team players. And I believe company and culture is about playing soccer, where the whole team has to play together. Sorry. 1 minute left?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go fast. Okay. Company is about playing football, where everyone plays together. It's not the Davis Cup. It's not tennis, where one great guy can win you the Davis Cup, which you can. You win your single, you win your reverse single, and you win the doubles. But it's about a team culture. So find people with the right fitment. I can tell you, intellectual arrogance at times can really, really kill culture. So you want to get people who fit with your culture, and every company culture is unique. Coming to marketing, I just want to leave one quick point out here. Advertising is great, but the most important thing is not about getting customers and how much you paid for them. The most important metric is repeat. How many customers come back because they enjoyed your product experience? So please pay for customers if you're confident that you have a lifetime value. And there are great examples. If each of you ask yourself, which are the brands you go back to all the time? You go back to the brands which you trust the most. It's not about saving 100 rupees or 500 rupees or 10 dirhams or $5, because in the long run, people want reliability and they want trust. And good customers are always willing to pay a little bit of a premium for that. Okay, can I take an extra minute?
You have a little bit of time left.
Okay, so I'll just give you my 2 bits on our future thinking. We believe if we don't innovate, we're going to perish. And by that I mean, if you look at some of these mock-ups, these are actual screenshots from our app. Today, when you ask for a flight search, we give you a fare calendar with a forecast of when that flight will be available the cheapest. And so we're helping our customers say, maybe you want to shift a day to see a cheaper flight. We are now personalizing. When our customers come back to us, we built a full personalization network. We're only pushing relevant content to you, be it a hotel or be it an airline ticket. If you're a customer who stays in a 5-star hotel and travels business class, I'll be silly to keep showing you budget hotels. So we're very, very careful about stuff like that. And eventually, I'm going to leave you with my last and most important slide. There's a word in India, in Indian language, it's called karma. And the karma philosophy is, don't focus on the fruits of the labor. Focus on doing a really good job, which in our business is, do the right thing for the customer, and it will pay for itself. So always build a business, however big or small. Build a very good business. Build a business which is clean always. Build a business at the end of the day that you're going to be very proud of. Thank you.
Thank you so much.